Let's move over to the pass catchers here, guys. And Matthew, we start with Davante Adams, who, if you don't believe there's a little milestone chasing right now between him and Aaron Rodgers, he's got almost a 33% target share over his past 4 games. And we've seen him get a lot of red zone looks from Rodgers in recent weeks as Rodgers is chasing that 500 touchdown.
Rodgers is chasing that. Rodgers is chasing a gig next year. So is Davante Adams, who wants to prove that he is still one of the elite wide receivers in the National Football League. And so you're right. Rodgers is looking for Adams early and often. And I've mentioned the target share, not only because of, that's an obvious stat to talk about, but also specifically to Buffalo. Because wide receivers that have seen at least 7 targets against the Bills this year are averaging 23.6 fantasy points per game. For as great as Josh Allen is and as brilliant as the Bills' offense is, their defense has struggled. Since week 10, no team in the NFL allows more fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver. No team in the NFL allows more yards per game to opposing wide receivers, again, since week 10. And so they're just giving up a ton of fantasy points, yards, receptions. You pick a stat, and the Bills give it up to wide receivers. So massive target share for Davante Adams and a great matchup. I'm as a top 4 play this week.
Man, Matthew, I don't even think, let's be specific too, right? That massive target share is crazy. At least 11 targets in 6 out of his last 7 games. Aaron Rodgers don't care. Davante Adams is double covered, triple covered. He's throwing his boy the ball to the point where Garrett Wilson's like, hey, you got to ask them why I ain't getting the ball. Furthermore, he's went over 100 yards in 2 of his last 3 games. He scored a touchdown in 4 straight games. And like you said, the Bills defense on the back end, they haven't been able to cover anybody. So now you got Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers coming in, who literally is stat padding. He might be the most loviest of all the loves on this list this week, Matthew.
Well, Lawrence, not too far behind him, is a big love of this show, Brian Thomas Jr., where the rookie looked pretty good with Trevor Lawrence. With Mac Jones, he's looked unguardable. I mean, second most targets in the NFL over the past 4 weeks for BTJ.
Yeah, it's to the point where, this is just the type of talent that we can already see where it don't matter who his quarterback is, right? Like how DeAndre Hopkins was back in the day when he had 12 quarterbacks for the Houston Texans. He's that type of player. He had a season high 40% target share in his first matchup against the Titans. That was just a few weeks ago in week 14. So it wasn't like it was, week 2 or week 3. And we was worried about BTJ when Mac Jones first got in there because he went through a little low for about 3 weeks. He wasn't doing so well, but he's back. He was wide open on his touchdown, but hey, whose fault is that for not covering the best receiver on the field? Gotta love BTJ this week, man.
Yeah, I would agree, Lawrence. Look, I'm as a top 6 play. Like, for all the things that have gone wrong in Jacksonville this year, Brian Thomas Jr. is one of the bright spots. I think one of the best wide receivers out of this rookie class, somebody that has just kind of exploded on both the NFL and the fantasy stage. First match, think about week 14, which wasn't that long ago. Week 14, that was the first time the Jags played the Titans, and he had a 40% target share, right? As we've talked about his target share quite a bit during this segment. Well, the reason I bring up the target share specifically is that since week 11, there have been 7 different wide receivers to see at least 8 targets against the Titans. 6 of them have scored 15 or more fantasy points. Titans bottom 6 in the NFL in terms of completion rate. Touchdowns allowed on deep passes. This is all again since week 11. So I think BTJ is in for a big game this week. He's an easy top 10 play for me.
Yeah, and Matthew, the same could be said for your boy, Terry McLaurin. I mean, it feels like over previous years, we know Terry was going to get his receptions. He was going to get his yards, but he's a guy traditionally that just doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. Well, welcome Jaden Daniels into town where McLaurin's already got 12 this year. And because of that, he's got almost 16 fantasy points in 9 of his past 10 games, averaging exactly 15.8. Fire up Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, Terry McLaurin has just sort of been unlocked by Jaden Daniels, and you couldn't ask for a better matchup in the fantasy finals than the Atlanta Falcons. Since week 9, Lawrence Jackson's Atlanta Falcons are allowing 41.1 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. That's most in the NFL. And in fact, during that stretch, Lawrence Jackson's Atlanta Falcons are allowing the most yards per game to perimeter wide receivers. It's worth noting that Lawrence Jackson's Atlanta Falcons are tied for the most touchdowns allowed to wide receivers this season. And McLaurin, of course, gets almost 50% of Washington's end zone targets. So they're looking for Scary Terry. And against the Falcons, Lawrence Jackson's Atlanta Falcons, I should clarify, they have a lot of success. They should have a lot of success like so many teams have this year. Lauren, something to think about next year is maybe hiring a defensive-minded head coach.
Well, Lawrence Jackson's Atlanta Falcons might have something to say when they get down there to DC this weekend. We're going to see, but we'll save that for later in the weekend. Maybe we might have a little bet brewing, but I'm not going to disagree with you on the fact that I, too, love Terry McLaurin this week. Look, 7 touchdowns as a rookie, right? That was his career high. For the first time, he finally has double-digit touchdowns in a season, and that's thanks to the fact that he scored in 4 straight games. In three out of his last 4 games, he's got at least 73 receiving yards. He's less than 100 yards away from reaching a new career high, and you said it. Key word. Jaden Daniels, that's what he needed. So now he's going to get that career high in receiving yards like he has it in touchdowns. So you can't, no matter who my team is, you can't not say that Terry McLaurin ain't been that one of them dudes this season.
Some others receiving votes here, guys. Of course, Lad McConkless, Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen, Jalen McMillan, Chig Okonkwo. A theme with this list here, Matthew. A lot of these guys in recent weeks have become the go-to targets of their quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you see it on your screen there with the exception of McMillan. They're all slot guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of one of the new cheat codes of the NFL. I wouldn't say that new, but like we just see this, right? McConkey's had 5 straight games with 14 or more fantasy points with a 25% target share. So it's not fluky. You like the matchup against the Patriots. How about Keenan Allen? But I hope I'm wrong on this because I'm in a league where I played against Travis Kelce, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson. I'm down by like 75 points. I haven't even had a player yet. And that the same guy that had those 3 also has Keenan Allen going tonight. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be. Since week 7, teams that face Seattle are averaging the 2nd most slot targets per game. Keenan Allen's been red hot. He's a top 20 play for me this week. Adam Thielen out of the slot. Tampa Bay allows the 3rd most yards to the slot this season. Thielen has 4 straight with a 24% target share or more. And McMillan, of course, the rookie coming on for Tampa Bay. He's had a 20% target share his last 3 games. He scored in each of those last 3 games. He's actually got 4 touchdowns in that stretch. And then my guy, Chig Okonkwo, it's weird, but over the last 2 weeks, Mason Rudolph seems to look for Chig Okonkwo and only Chig Okonkwo. 31% target share with Mason Rudolph under center. Nice matchup against the Jaguars, who since week 10 are allowing the 7th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends.
Yeah, Matthew, you said, those first 3 guys, they devour the slot snaps. And even McMillan, even though he doesn't get majority, the last 2 weeks, he's at least gotten 24 snaps out of the slot. So he's getting some looks there. And that was really his best position in college. So we'll see how that goes. Lawrence, it's been interesting seeing him finally carve out a role in Baker Mayfield's passing attack because he looked so good this summer. It just took a couple injuries to get there.
He is coming along at just the right time because they need him, and he's been delivering. Like Matthew said, he scored in 3 straight games. I think right now, and I don't think it's a question now, especially with kind of Cade Otton kind of drifted away. He's their number 2 right now in the passing game. Take out the running backs. I would say it's Jalen McMillan. The Buccaneers need this win to stay alive in the NFC South race, and you can't just go to Mike Evans all the time. And when Baker Mayfield hasn't, he's looked towards Jalen McMillan, and he has delivered at least 6 targets in 3 straight games. And that's all you can really ask for when you're playing behind Mike Evans. Like, he's been more than solid during this small stretch to me.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.